Good morning, everyone. Clint McLaughlin here with Midwest Market Management. It is Tuesday, June 3rd. First weather report for the month of June, Riley. We're going to tune in here for U.S. weather. And wow, we're just, turning the calendar here. Probably the biggest complaint would be that maybe we could use some extra heat units. I know there's still some producers fighting the planting battle, but crop progress report shows us that those numbers are diminishing and pretty localized, not a widespread issue. And precipitation in the forecast. There's a lot of storms been moving around the Midwest, even as we speak. I did notice some of my producers up in southern Minnesota uh, received some pretty significant storm damage last night to their structural property, their houses. I saw a few Facebook posts. And so, as always, summertime, these storms move through. A lot of red cells in them. You're going to get some wind, hail activity, and then also a little bit of false advertisement, Riley. Sometimes red cells aren't necessarily always putting down precipitation. So something to think about as we, move through the weather forecast. But overall, barring the isolated issues, looks like we're off to a pretty good start, Riley.
Yep, I'd agree. If you're ready, let's just hop into the maps, get more into this. So first thing I want to talk about here, you mentioned planning progress. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Only regions where anybody's showing any kind of concern. Ohio is quite a bit behind average, currently at 72% versus an 87% average. I wouldn't say that's a huge market mover. As
I
we
do
get in,
believe that that's gonna have the Eastern Corn Belt is, when we talk about market moving, well, you got, futures plus basis equals cash. And while the futures market has been being derailed here lately, basis markets out there are on fire. And this might actually extend that period of prolonged better than normal or very favorable basis level. So if there's any silver lining out there for these guys, in that situation is, with them being behind and not getting planted until into June time period, I think that basis should remain firm out there for some time now.
yeah, and I was just checking Poet and Marion, which is pretty central Ohio, showing basis, we're looking at 45 over the Board of Trade. So that's pretty substantial and not something you see every day. So curious to see how long that can stick around and maybe even firm up even further. So
Yeah.
good point to bring up there. We'll be interested here last day of June when we see what planted acres come out as for the corn and bean side from that Eastern Corn Belt. But for right now, there's nothing I can really say or do about it, unless you have a different opinion, Clint.
No, we'll see what we get at the end of the month.
So moving into the crop conditions, you mentioned it a little bit. The big thing that we got last week that we haven't had was Friday through today. We had some heat. So you can see, especially looking at Minnesota, conditions improved 7-8% in Wisconsin. I'd attribute a lot of that to stuff getting through that ugly duckling phase and getting the heat it needed to really start popping. So
I would agree.
as you look to the east, I'd say it was more of they're getting extra rainfall. If you look at Illinois, I'd call that down 4%, more attributed to the southern region of the state than the northern.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and Ohio's a +5, but when you're improving from very poor, it's easier to get a big increase when the bar was set pretty low.
exactly. So the one thing that did intrigue me was Nebraska over the last 13 days. As we get into that map, they did get a solid amount of rainfall, and their conditions declining kind of surprised me. So that was the one thing I'm kind of perplexed on that one. But let's hop more into the bean side of things here. same story as corn. I'm kind of going to gloss over this. East is behind. Everything to the west is ahead of average. Bean conditions, this is the first one of the year that's come out. So 67%, that was pretty much right what trade expectations were. So nothing really shocking there. Now moving into the actual weather maps here, temperatures over the next 5 days. We got some heat and now it's looking to cool off again. We're kind of getting into a seesaw rhythm here where we're getting cool over the next 5 days, but then as we move to the 6 to 10, back into the 80s to northern Corn Belt in the upper 70s. So I wouldn't say temperatures are going to be a huge issue right now. Wouldn't mind seeing some warmer temperatures to help farmers out a little bit, but in terms of crop conditions, I don't see stuff getting worse on 70-degree temperatures. So
No, pretty ideal.
yep. So looking at the last 13-day rainfall, this is the one I mentioned that I'm kind of surprised Nebraska, as dry as they were, they've had some really solid rains and their conditions declining I found that kind of shocking. So that's one to see what happens there. But other than that, there's not really anything here we didn't know about in that 1 to 13 day previously. So moving into the 1 to 5, looking ahead, that southern region that's been getting rain is looking to continue. I mean, I wonder if those guys can even step out of their house anymore without water coming in the door.
They might be getting a little humidity they're not used to down there.
But more rain there to the south. Currently got on and off showers as I'm sitting here in central Iowa. So looking to get rain that's moving into the eastern Corn Belt over the next few days. Different weather models have kind of struggled to show how much is going to come from these rain. It looks really, really spotty. Even here on this, you can see little chunks here and there where the map gets darker. So interesting to see how this all turns out, if it's really as spotty as it looks right now. So with that, moving into the 6 to 10 day regions of the north and the Dakotas looking to get a little bit of rain. Wheat country down in Oklahoma and Texas looking to get some. After that,
yeah, that's actually starting to become more of a problem than a good thing, though. That's like, this isn't the time of year that you really want this much precipitation on the winter wheat. I mean, in the Panhandle and into Oklahoma, they're moving into harvest time, so not ideal for that. Kansas, that's kind of a mixed bag. There's a lot of wheat country out there, but then there's also a lot of corn, soy, and milo that needs the rain. So it's really tough to navigate what's the best out there this time of year. But we are getting to that point rather where we could kind of ease off on the water in the wheat countries.
Yeah, and when we put it all together in this 1 to 13 day, it's gonna make you say that's not going to happen. So this 1 to 13 day looks really, really wet. Some of that's the extended model stuff that can't really be trusted, but some of it is between that 1 to 5 and the 6 to 10. There's just enough small rains that it's adding up to a lot more amounts than you think. But the one thing that comes to mind for me, Clint, is through this map, we're getting out to the 15th of June, and there's not really any reason to be scared of a drought.
No, I mean, clearly we're a long ways out before, we get into pollination. There's a lot of weather ahead of us, but actually I noticed, there were some correlations to 2012, and I actually went and looked, and it was really fun, really interesting to go back and look at the 2012 drought monitor map and how fast it escalated and went from what looked to be pretty good to clearly the drought of 2012 that we all remember. But I want to do a little more research on that. But I do believe that the temperatures were higher and the rain had already shut off by now. And so you didn't see it in the drought monitor map until you got, like, May looked good. And then all of a sudden, July looked horrific. Well, I believe that's because it wasn't raining in May and June. And then all at once, the drought monitor map really started to reflect what was going on, Where here, that's clearly, not what's going on. Like we're very ample in the rain.
Yep. So definitely something. And the one other important part, we haven't had the heat this year either.
Yeah,
So
correct.
we're actually, I mean, part of the biggest weather scare right now is actually the lack of heat, and that's what's hurting the crop conditions right now. So any heat would be well received. So could actually have the opposite effect of what happened in 2012.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
Other than that, that's all I have today on the weather side.
So appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. We'll be back here on Thursday.
This material has been prepared by a sales or trading employee or agent of Midwest Market Management and is in the nature of a solicitation. This material is not a research report prepared by of Midwest Market Management Research Department. By accepting this communication, you agree that you are an experienced user of the futures markets, capable of making independent trading decisions, and agree that you are not and will not rely solely on this communication in making trading decisions. Distribution in some jurisdictions may be prohibited or restricted by law. Persons in possession of this communication indirectly should inform themselves about and observe any such prohibition or restrictions. To the extent that you have received this communication indirectly and solicitations are prohibited in your jurisdiction without registration, the market commentary in this communication should not be considered a solicitation. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance, whether actual or indicated by simulated historical tests of strategies, is not indicative of future results. Trading advice is based on information taken from trades and statistical services and other sources that of Midwest Market Management believes are reliable. We do not guarantee that such information is accurate or complete, and it should not be relied upon as such. Trading advice reflects our good faith judgment at a specific time and is subject to change without notice. There is no guarantee that the advice we give will result in profitable trades.